season's still underway. All of my football teams did terrible over the weekend. My limited escape from the crashing down universe around us, and they were all disappointing. We're back. It's Monday, and we're glad to be back at it. We've got some stuff to chat about that I want to bring to your attention because I feel like it's really important. But I always want to remind you that if you're not up to speed on what's going on by way of family-oriented news and what's of concern to the voters that primarily base their action and their outlook on the values that faith and family people do. OneNewsNow.com is the place to go, and it's one of those resources that you should be checking in every single day. There's a headline over there right now. It's actually from the Associated Press that says that Ted Cruz is flaying Obama's health law and cast the blames at the Dems. Man, that's an understatement. He was on with Candy Crowley yesterday on CNN and just dismantled her piece by piece. Every time she was at this crossroads of trying to get him to say something that violated one of his principles, he just exposed her for it. And it was a really powerful intersection. I may link that up to the AFA Today page a little bit later. But over on OneNewsNow.com, my brand new column is out, and I'd really love for you to take a look at it. Today, simply titled "Why World War II Vets," and this is what I really would love for people to get a grasp of and a focus on. The president has gone really wholeheartedly into the strange closing down of things. What do I mean by that? Well, last week I had reports not just of the World War II memorial, but we also had reports up in the place where Mount Rushmore is. There's several pull-offs in the highway that surround Mount Rushmore where people can pull off on a highway. They're driving along the highway, they pull off, they get out, they snap a picture or two, and then they keep driving. Those pull-offs are specifically built for those very reasons. Well, just to prove a point, the president has decided to go close those pull-off points, which means what? Now, remember, the government shutdown is supposed to be saving money that we don't have because the government is not able to operate without the money that it says that it needs. But in order to close those, you have to go actually physically send a person to put cones up so that section of sidewalk or street or pavement is then closed. Now, I made this observation last week jokingly, saying that the closing of the World War II memorial was kind of the equivalent of trying to close a sidewalk. I didn't know the president was going to go actually try to close a sidewalk. I didn't think that I'm going to stop giving him ideas because I'm a little dismayed that I may have planted that. That's not the only one. I don't know if you heard about this, but in the Florida Keys, there's actually an attempt. I want to see if I can find the right story link to this. There's actually an attempt to close the ocean. I have misplaced that link. I'm going to have to go find it again. But this is getting a little bit crazy, friends, because closing things means you send people home and they're not there working that day. You're not still paying them. Here's the other thing we found out on Saturday, and this is kind of, I don't know, it's a little bit odd. They have said that we have, seen the government shut down. But when you look at what has been shut down, and the Washington Examiner, one of their mainstream newspapers, had this today. Byron York asked a Republican source on the Senate Budget Committee for an estimate of what has been shut down. This was the answer. Based on estimates drawn from the CBO, Congressional Budget Office, and the OMB, Office of Management, something. Anyway, data. 83% of the government operations continue. 83% of the government operations continue. The figure assumes that the government pays amounts due on appropriations obligated before the shutdown. That equals about $512 billion. Spends about $225 billion on exempted military and civilian personnel. Pays entitlement benefits for those found eligible before the shutdown. That's about $2 trillion. And pays interest costs when due, $237 billion. This is about 83% of the projected 2014 spending of $3.16 trillion. Now, to hear the press talk about this, the end has come. People are thinking that Armageddon has set in, that it's the end of the world as we know it, to quote a very bad REM song. But here's the problem. It's not anything like that. The government shutdown, at least as measured by the money spent, is really only about 17% of the government spending. Byron York says perhaps that is why the effects of the shutdown, beyond some of the most visible problems, like at the monuments and memorials, don't seem to have the expected intensity. 17% of federal expenditures is still a huge amount of money, and the shutdown is affecting many people. But many more who are dependent on federal dollars are still receiving their money, either as salary, transfer payment, or in some other form. Viewed that way, it's no wonder both Republicans and Democrats appear to believe they can last the shutdown out, at least for a couple of weeks, until they try to resolve the debt limit crisis due to arrive on October the 17th. Now, okay, so we've been told that this is the worst thing that's ever been seen, et cetera, et cetera. 17% of the government is really what we've shut down. I'm curious, 888-589-8840. Right now, as we sit here now, 1 week into the shutdown, are you worried? Is the nation going to fall apart because... Well, there were some people that were saying they were going out to find mainstream jobs. Every person that's not working for the government is a benefit to the taxpayers. So if you actually go get a job in the mainstream and not work in the public sector, that's actually a benefit to everyone, including yourself. So do that if you can. But if you're of those that are stuck in the realm of this, you're probably going to have a minority view on this, but the American people as a whole, is it even worth calling a shutdown? We haven't really shut anything down. We're still going to spend $2-point-something trillion. Do you know how many dollars it takes to make $1 trillion? That's a lot. If you stacked single dollar bills, one on top of the other, and you were able to do that in a column, to get to $1 million, you would get approximately to the height of the Empire State Building here in New York. If you were to stack $1 billion, it would take you way out into outer space. But $1 trillion would take you to the moon and back twice. That's how much money that we are going to spend, even though we're technically in a shutdown. Does that make any sense to you? Doesn't to me. But here's the thing: I still don't understand these closures. We're closing the ocean, so we're sending people out to tell people that they can't go in the ocean because it's closed. We're setting up cones and we're setting up patrols to make sure that pull-off photographic spots along some of our state highways are actually guarded so that nobody goes there because they're closed. See, friends, it's all a big joke. It's all a big joke. The president doesn't really care about the shutdown. He wants to see the legislation go forward unencumbered. The legislation that will bankrupt small business, have a drastic impact on the economy, and put millions of people out of work. He wants that legislation put into place. And he doesn't care what has to be done to affect that. So if it means kicking World War II veterans in the teeth while they're in the nation's capital last week, he's okay with that. He doesn't really care about their sacrifice because his agenda and what he wants to see happen is way more important than the actual welfare of the American people. Ted Cruz, when he was on Candy Crowley yesterday, she kept hammering him. How come, you look like you're unrelenting on this? He said, Candy, go back and check your facts. The House Republicans have come back with proposal after proposal after proposal to continue funding for parts of the government, et cetera, et cetera. The president and Harry Reid are the ones that have said, we're not negotiating with you. What does that mean, friend? We're not negotiating with you. That's, you do it exactly my way, or I'm taking my ball and going home. The side that keeps making proposals, to me, seems to be the one that is, quote, negotiating. I don't know. Maybe it's just an odd way of looking at it from my perspective. 888-589-8840. Some of you want to weigh in on this. Let's talk to Eric in Arkansas. Hi, Eric. Welcome. You're on with Kevin McCullough on AFA Today. Happy Monday.
Hey, Kevin. God bless you, bud.
Thank you, sir.
The media is talking about how many government workers have been furloughed, which will eventually get their checks anyway. But
right.
Nobody's talking about the private sector that have already lost their jobs, that won't get any pay, and won't have a job when it's all over and done with. And if we're for smaller government and we give in, there goes 16,000 more going to the IRS. How's that going to help us? You know? What about all the private sector jobs that already lost their job?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, if I had been President Obama coming in 2008, the only thing I would have focused on until it was fixed was the economy and the unemployment issue. We've gone 6 years just kind of, holding our finger up to the wind and hoping something would come along that would fix it, and it really hasn't. I mean, we're still in terms of the amount of time that we've been at above 7.5%, still a long historic record of this. And when you think about how many real people that affects, I mean, Obamacare has already started reducing people's hours, and you're not going to see that in the direct unemployment numbers, because if somebody gets their hours cut from 35 to 29, they're going to lose benefits. They're going to, they may have a slight reduction in their overall amount of money, but there's a qualitative difference in their life that has changed. And the reason that companies are being forced to do that is because they can't continue to meet the demand of what they have to in order to fulfill the new stipulations put on them. But shutdown begins week number 2, and I'm just curious, are you ready for them to end this? And if so, how do you want them to end it? Do you want the Republicans to cave and to allow Obamacare to go through kind of unencumbered, or should there be some willingness by the executive branch to compromise? What are your thoughts on that? 888-589-8840. You're already packing the phone line, so I can tell you want to chat about it. Let's talk about it. I'm Kevin McCullough. This is AFA Today on AFR Talk. Stay with us.